Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from the Chartered Institute of Export and International Trade about two significant customs procedures, these being returned goods relief and temporary admission. This is the second of two webinars that the Chartered Institute is running as part of the Department for Business and Trade's International Trade Week, and we're delighted to be partnering with Customs for Trade in delivering today's webinar. My name is William Barnes-Graham, the Executive Editor at the Chartered Institute, and for those of you who are new to our webinar programme, welcome along, and for anyone returning, welcome back. If you are new to the Chartered Institute, just by way of introduction, we are the foremost association for importers, exporters and supply chain professionals, with a mission to empower global trade by equipping businesses and individuals with the expertise needed to trade compliantly, sustainably and profitably. Let's begin today's webinar, though, by introducing our speakers for today and talking through the running order. So we will first of all be hearing from Anna Doherty from the Chartered Institute, who will be giving a short presentation introducing both return goods relief and temporary admission. Anna will be familiar to many of you, I am sure, but for those of you who are newer to us, Anna is our Customs Practice Director and a leading industry commentator on international trade and customs. She is also the industry chair of HMRC's Joint Customs Consultative Committee and also represents the Chartered Institute at the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement Domestic Advisory Group. Following the presentation, I will be chatting with Ludo Demier, the Director for Strategic Customer Engagements at Customs for Trade, about how these procedures can work in practice. Ludo brings 18 years of experience and expertise working in the logistics and supply chain sector, having previously spent 15 years at TVH as a business analyst and product manager, gaining experience in warehouse management systems and supply chain forecasting. 4 years ago, he joined Customs for Trade as product manager for the Special Procedures Squad. After 18 months, Ludo briefly served as the head of onboarding before moving to his current role as Director of Strategic Customer Engagements, where he oversees complex projects and strategic partnerships. After talking with Ludo, we will then have time to put some of your questions to both Anna and Ludo, and I'll say a bit more about how to ask questions in a moment. Before I do that, though, we're going to launch our first poll in a moment, for which we are looking to determine whether you are currently using either or both of return goods relief and or temporary admission. The link to the poll should be popping up in the chat in a moment. My colleague Humera will be doing so. It's a smartpolls.co.uk link, so please do follow that link and share your response there. While you are answering that poll, the usual housekeeping notes from me. Firstly, you can contact me and the team with your comments or questions throughout the webinar. For questions, we ask that you use the Q&A function, which should be viewable at the top of the Teams window. Please note, we cannot guarantee we will get to every comment or question in the allocated time. We've got 45 minutes today, though we can end early if we're running out of relevant questions. Indeed, please do keep your questions as relevant as you can. We won't be going into company-specific or non-trade related questions today, so my advice is to keep it relatively high level, such that other people on the line would be as interested in the answer as you are. Secondly, a recording of today's webinar will be posted onto the Insights section of our website by the end of the week. To find this, you'll just need to go to export.org.uk, then click the Resources tab in the navigation bar, and then Insights from the drop-down, and you should be able to find the recording there. Do get in touch if you have any issues with any of that. But for now, let's have a quick look at the poll results. So thank you, whoever's just shared them. We've got quite a few of you already using both of these procedures. So 40% of you are using both, 19%, just under a fifth of you, are using just RGR. Fewer still using just TA, 27% of you, so just over a quarter, are using neither. And there's at least one of you who's not sure, which is interesting. So thank you everyone for responding to that poll. We've got quite a mix in the audience here in terms of experience using these procedures. At this point, though, I'd like to hand over to Anna to begin today's session in earnest with a presentation introducing both RGR, return goods relief, and TA, temporary admission. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Will, and welcome everybody. My role today here is just to really bring a little bit of an explanation behind these two particular procedures. They don't really usually get a spotlight, so this gives us an opportunity to explain when can they be used, what are the benefits, but also perhaps what could be the challenges in using those particular procedures. I'm going to start with the return goods relief, and if I could have the next slide, please. So return goods relief is a procedure that allows businesses to re-import goods that they have previously exported and claim a relief from duty, VAT, or both. However, in order to do so, certain conditions need to be met. So a lot of businesses, especially the ones that we tend to deal with, they would have heard that returns are duty-free, and therefore anything that's coming back, they don't have to pay duty and tax. And that might be the case, and usually that is the case if using return goods relief. However, as I just mentioned, conditions must be met. Now, RGR does not require a prior authorization from customs. So it's open to onto the importer responsibility to make sure that they meet the conditions for claiming the duty and or tax relief under the return goods relief. So there's certain criteria that need to be met. First one is that generally goods must have been in free circulation in the UK when they were first exported. That means that they needed to have all the duties and taxes paid on them, either made in a UK product or a good that has been imported and released to free circulation. Now, RGR does work with other special procedures, such as inward processing and authorized use, but in general, RGR goods must have been in free circulation before they were exported. So that's the first criteria. The second criteria is they must have been exported 3 years before the re-importation. So that's 3 years from the initial export before they are being re-imported. Now, there is a flexibility around it where RGR is being used, where HMRC could grant an extension to this 3-year period, but in general, 3 years is the maximum. And then those goods must be coming back unaltered except for maintenance. So RGR should not be used if you had exported a product for that product to be further processed or manufactured to then be returned. This is where you would normally use outward processing relief. RGR is where you have exported the product and then that product needs to come back to you for whatever reason. That product, when it comes back, should also be designed to stay in the UK. So it's a one-to-one transaction. Now, where it gets interesting is for the duty relief to apply, the exporter that initially sent the product out does not necessarily need to be the same as the importer that is receiving the product back. So it could work in a quite complicated supply chains. However, for the VAT relief to apply, the exporter must be the same party as the importer that is receiving the goods back. So those are kind of the two criteria that as an importer you need to consider. Were you the party that exported the goods? Same EORI number and same VAT number. If not, you will not be able to claim the VAT relief on that product. Now, we also have, so the two benefits of RGR is the duty relief and the VAT relief on the re-imported goods. If I can then have the next slide, please. Thank you. So how do you access RGR? As I said, you do not need an authorization from HMRC. RGR is not a special customs procedure. However, you need to indicate to HMRC that you are wishing to claim the relief. And the way in which you claim the relief is by using the appropriate procedure codes in your CDS import declaration in the UK. So you need to tell HMRC that that's what you're trying to do. The requested procedure code will start with 61. That is the re-importation element. And then the second 2 digits of the procedure code tell HMRC the previous procedure under which the goods were under. So generally, there is 6 requested procedure codes that you can use for RGR claim. 9 times out of 10, you're either going to be using 6110 or 6123. What's the difference? 6110 is for goods which you exported, and at the time of export, you didn't necessarily know that these are going to be coming back to you because a procedure code for standard export starts with a 10. So that's what it tells HMRC. 61 is return of the goods, 10 from a previous export. 6123 tells HMRC that this is return of the goods, 61, of goods which were previously temporary exported. So the procedure code at the export must have started with the 23. Either of these are fine. However, which one you use will depend on the procedure code that was on your export declaration when you first sent out the goods. You then also need to apply the appropriate additional procedure code. additional procedure codes in CDS. You can have multiple of those in your procedure codes. These are now telling HMRC which relief you're claiming. Are you claiming duty and VAT relief only, or are you claiming both duty and VAT relief, or are you just claiming the VAT duty relief only? So this is F01 or F05. So your full procedure code will be either 6110 F01, 6123 F01, and multiple combinations. As always, you need to go onto the CDS declaration completion instructions to make sure that the codes that you're using match your situation, and that you're actually ensuring that you're using the appropriate procedure codes for the evidence that you hold. The next thing is the evidence. So in order to claim RGR, you need to prove that those goods were initially exported from the UK. Now, how do you do that? Ideally, you will have the export declarations for the goods when they were initially exported. So that way you can see the procedure codes for what the product was. You can show that it was within the 3 years. You can show the status of the goods being in the free circulation, and you can prove to HMRC that these goods are now coming back and you are able to claim that relief. That means that in your import declaration using RGR, you would need to reference the export declaration of the goods going out, and that tells HMRC through CDS that you're claiming duty and or VAT relief, that goods were previously exported and they're now coming back. Now, of course, what does that mean? That means you need to have a really thorough element of compliance because you need to have the full traceability of the goods that have gone out for the goods that are coming back in. You need to have the same classification, because obviously the goods must not have been processed, so they need to have the same commodity code classification, the same origin, all of those same details. Whatever came out must come back in. Now, it doesn't mean, because as I said previously, for duty relief, it doesn't mean that the exporter and the importer must be the same party. So if you are a manufacturer of the product, you send it off to your client, and now that your client is saying, well, actually, apologies, but my product is broken, I need to return it to you, or I no longer want it, they could return it to you, or they could return it somewhere else. And as long as that other party also has the evidence, they are able to claim the duty relief on that as well. They will not be able to claim VAT relief because only the initial exporter can do that. And then if I can have the next slide, please. So RGR in practice, where could you see that? Where do we see this sort of procedures being used? As I just mentioned, returns a lot of the time. Product exported from the UK, you are then looking to get that back in because your customer no longer wants it. RGR is the perfect things for that. Exhibition materials, when you've sent something out, if you know those goods are going to be coming back in, you can export them then with a temporary procedure code 23 and get them back in under RGR. Surplus stock, you've sold too much and your client wants to return some of it back to you, as long as it's in an unaltered state within the last 3 years, and you can evidence that could come back to you, and you don't need to be doing you can use RGR for that. You don't need to be paying duties or VAT on this. And then also unaltered equipment. So if you have engineers going out on site to visit a client, they have to take tools with them. Those tools may be quite a significant value. If you want to make sure that you're not being charged duties and taxes upon the return of them, you can use RGR for that. As long as you've exported that product, you can then re-import it back in. If I can have the next slide, please. Now we're moving on to temporary admission. And temporary admission, in contrast with RGR, is a special customs procedure. That means that there are slightly different rules that apply to it than they do with RGR. And to be fair, temporary admission serves an entirely different purpose. With RGR, goods are temporarily exported and then they need to come back, and they need to come back for good. Whereas with temporary admission, goods are being sent to the UK temporarily and they are destined to ultimately go back out. So it's almost like a flip side, although they're not necessarily connected. So if I could have the next slide, please. So temporary admission is a special customs procedures, and it is used to bring eligible goods into the UK for a particular event or purpose, such as importing works of art for an exhibition, rock band's equipment for playing at a festival. If you consider that you have maybe a theatre show coming to the UK and playing for a long season, temporary admission is great for that if decorations needs to come in or anything like that. The procedure can also be used to import empty transport equipment, such as shipping containers to the UK and hold goods for export from the UK. However, in contrast with other special procedures that you may be familiar with, inward processing, outward processing, customs warehousing, temporary admission is generally designed to be used by those businesses, individuals that are not actually established in the UK, although certain exceptions apply here. Individuals visiting UK temporarily, our businesses, can benefit from temporary admission, allowing them to bring their possessions with them without the payment of duty and import VAT. Additionally, customs intermediaries and logistics providers, they can also hold temporary authorization, as well as the importer themselves. However, if a logistics provider or a customs intermediary is using temporary admission authorization themselves on behalf of their client, they actually have the responsibility placed on them by the temporary admission procedure, meaning they're responsible for ensuring that the product is that the goods that are imported are eligible goods, because not all products are eligible, that they are staying within the approved timescales, because there are limits into how long goods can remain in the UK under temporary admission, and also that nothing is being done to those goods other than maintaining them. Goods that are being imported under temporary admission, they cannot be processed, they cannot be, they're not being used for manufacture or anything like that. If you consider it, they can be used, such as bands equipment playing at a festival, but they cannot actually be further processed into something else other than maintaining it. Next slide, please. So temporary admission is a special procedure, and therefore it acts slightly differently than RGR in that you need to gain permission from HMRC before you can use it. However, there are several ways in which you can actually obtain the permission to do so. One of them is a full authorization. So you apply to HMRC and you get authorization to use temporary admission. You can also look at it in a retrospective way. So full authorization retrospectively, that means it can work for import for the previous 12 months. The other option is authorization by declaration. What does that mean? That means by using the appropriate procedure codes in your import declaration, you are telling HMRC you're wishing to use temporary admission, and HMRC grants you an authorization for that one declaration. So it's not a full authorization for all of your imports. It's an authorization for that particular declaration. Now, you may be familiar with authorization by declaration. For other special procedure, there are limits into how many times it can be used per year. For temporary admission, there is no limit. However, there are restrictions in terms of the need for security, because obviously goods coming in temporarily, they have their duties and taxes suspended. And therefore there needs to be an element of guarantee or financial security to cover the duty and tax liability for those goods because they remain under customs control. The other option to use temporary admission for certain eligible goods is either by oral declaration or by crossing the goods by any other act, or as we previously called it, declaration by conduct. And if you consider now, temporary admission can be used by those that are not necessarily established in the UK, that are coming here temporarily, that need to bring their goods for a particular purpose. Then if you are driving the car from France through the Eurotunnel and you're driving that car with your goods that you're bringing in temporarily, that is crossing the border by any other act, declaration by conduct. So if you're using the full authorization or authorization by declaration, that means you need to use CDS system to lodge your declaration for temporary admission. And for that, you actually need to be using the particular procedure codes, similarly as with RGR. So for temporary admission, to import goods, you need to be using 53 series procedure codes that indicates to HMRC that this is a temporary import on the temporary admission. And then when you're exporting it, it's 31. So you need for all the temporary admission declarations that you brought in, they then need to be closed out with the 31 procedure code. So there is a link between them. Again, record keeping and compliance is paramount here, because of course, while goods are being, as I just mentioned, while goods are being temporarily imported, they have duties and taxes suspended, and those liabilities are only released when the goods are being re-exported. Next slide, please. So temporary admission in practice, these are just some of the examples that I've mentioned that could be used for the goods for temporary admission. One thing that I did want to mention is how long is temporary, right? Because that's the question. And a lot of the time, businesses or individuals wanting to use temporary admission, they think it applies to everything for however long they want. Somebody sends them something for a little bit, and they think they can use temporary admission. That is not necessarily the case. Only goods listed in the UK legislation, temporary admission regulations, are actually eligible for temporary admission procedure. So there is a list of eligible goods. There's 29 different categories, and they all have different criteria for what sort of purposes they are able to be brought under, and therefore what businesses or individuals need to do in order to use them. There's also a time limit, so up to 48 months for some goods. However, again, it depends on the categories, and the HMRC will extend up to 10 years now if businesses can demonstrate the need for such an extension. So that's all from me. As you can tell, both RDR and temporary admission can be quite complicated. I will leave you for now. Ludo can bring over a little bit of how does it work in practice. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that this presentation may have juggled.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for introducing the complexity, I think, on both of those procedures. We're going to run our second poll before bringing on Ludo. So this time we're going to ask you if there are any barriers to using either of these procedures. The options being you might not have any barriers, you might already be using them, but if you're not using them, you might be facing complexity, cost, lack of awareness, or if there's any other barriers, please do feel free to share those in the comments as well. Lots of people are asking questions already, but before I move on to Ludo, Anna, I did just have one question for you I wanted to bring up, which is around the changes the government is looking to bring in regarding temporary admission. Could you just say a little bit more about these changes and why they're being introduced?
Sure. So government ran a consultation or a call for evidence in June 2023 about temporary admission and also other special procedures to make sure that they're still fit for purpose and whether they are doing what they should be doing. And what we've seen, especially on temporary admission, as I said, there is loads of different rules that govern them, different timelines, different goods, different eligibility. People are getting really confused about how to use it and where to use it. And that came out very, very clearly in the call for evidence. So in July this year, and I believe it was 16th of July this year, the government has introduced regulations which simplified elements of loads of the special procedures, including temporary admission. So we now have a customs technical handbook that's been published that shows the details of how to operate temporary admission, that has loads of the information within it, straight from HMRC. It also introduced a bit of simplified the way in which you use it in terms of aligning certain timeframes together. So it's no longer so complicated to figure out how long is temporary and how long you have for given products, and also expanded on intermediaries and logistics providers' ability to operate temporary admission procedure on behalf of their clients, because previously it was only limited to certain sectors, whereas now, as long as the conditions are met in terms of the control of the goods, it's open to all of the sectors. So there's an element of simplifications there.
Terrific. Well, I hope those simplifications work out in practice as well. That's great to hear. Thank you, Anna. Really important update. Before we move on to the next part of the webinar, I did just want to let everyone know of a new initiative that the Chartered Institute is launching as part of International Trade Week, which you can now see on screen. So regulatory change, digital transformation and increased HMRC enforcement have in general created a demand for more accountable, upskilled customs professionals. And that's why this International Trade Week, we're launching the Approved Customs Practitioner Professional Standard, which you can scan the QR code on screen to find out more about. This is the Chartered Institute's new benchmark for customs success. By becoming an approved customs practitioner, you gain recognition that you've attained the highest industry standards, an important signifier of skills, knowledge, and professionalism to clients and employers. Already backed by leaders at Wincanton, GetLink, and Waterstones, you can find out more about the new standard on our website, and there'll be a link in the chat shortly too. Now, let's have a quick look at the results of the poll. So hopefully we'll have that up in a second. I'll give him a moment. And let's see how you've been responding to in terms of barriers to using these procedures. So obviously a lot of you are already using these procedures as we determined from the first poll, but for those of you who aren't, it seems the lack of awareness is actually the main barrier at the moment, followed by complexity. So thank you everyone for responding to that poll. I also saw a comment come through from Dominic who said record keeping seems very paramount as well. So thank you everyone for responding to the polls and writing in comments and questions. We will come to questions in a moment's time. But at this point, I'd like to welcome to the stage Ludo Damier, the Director of Strategic Customer Engagements at Customs for Trade, as we go a bit deeper into how these procedures work in practice. Welcome, Ludo.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. Maybe a couple of short slides first for the people who don't know C4T yet. Originally, we started in 2004 as an advisory firm. And one of our clients at that moment was a Honda, a company in the UK that produces cars, probably well known by everybody. And they were having problems with their stock management for their IP plant in Swindon and their bonnet warehouse. So we started building software for them, and eventually we chose to solely focus on software, and we are running our software now for 10 years now. We have a head office in Mechelen in Belgium, a beautiful city if you ever want to try to visit it. We also have an office in Wigan in the UK. We have the ISO certification that is allowing us to make sure that everything is correct on our security side. And we do our software is running in multiple countries, later on more, and we focus on declaration filing, so the self-filing part. We support all the special procedures, and we're also running excise goods. We're a fastly growing company, and we also have recently launched a AI classification tool into the market. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Here you can see our current country coverage. As you see, our main focus is, of course, Belgium, UK, as that was during Brexit, which was for our company a huge opportunity to grow. And you can see we're connected to 6 countries and actively expanding to a couple of more. Also adding US soon, that is not on this list yet. But we're not only focusing on customs, we're also doing automation for the EMCS systems, for the certificate of origin systems, also the port systems, imagine CNS, MCP Destinate, but also CCS UK, all these different things we're connected to. And that's a little bit what we are doing at the moment. So that means that we can do all these special procedures in all these different countries, and that will also be shown in the example that I show afterwards. Yeah. Next slide, please. So here we have an in practice example of one of our clients that is currently using RGR. So it's a UK-based company that is doing part of their production in the European Union, and they are importing goods into the UK and later on transport a part of those goods back to the Republic of Ireland. Yeah. So what they're currently doing out of their production facility in Belgium, they do an export declaration. And then in our system, we basically are going to create a CMT in step, which is an RGR stock creation, which we then later on use on the Irish part to write off that stock and to make sure that we have the correct proof for these declarations, so that we can link back to the original export as Anna was describing. So we are using 2 different CPC codes for them. It can be a 1000 export out of Belgium. When they import into the UK, if they know that parts of those are going to stay in the UK, And they can also export it with the 2300 if they are going to use their temporary admission flow, if everything goes back out of the UK to the Republic of Ireland. So the standard UK inbound process applies in H1 flow and then a re-export. And then on the Irish side, we write off that stock with the correct documents. So here it's an INF3 document if it's required. So we can link those declarations together. So we write them off on a FIFO basis, depending on the lifetime of the products. It's food, so they have a limited lifetime where we write off the stock after a while. So this is basically how we set it up in CAS. And this is done basically with two different messages, one for the export, and we flip the data around for the import in the UK. And then on the export out of the UK, we flip the data around to create the import, write off the stock, provide all the proof for the Irish government, and make sure that everything is written off. So this is how we do it in practice. We have also clients who use it in combination with temporary admission, or of course clients who just use UK exports for RGR and then re-import them later on, depending a little bit on the business case. Okay. Yeah, that was the short example here.
Brilliant, thank you, Ludo. It's great to see that example. Great to find out a bit more about customs of trade as well. I was just wondering, I mean, obviously, you mentioned the CAS solution earlier. I'm just wondering, do you have a main tip for businesses looking at technology as a way for automating how they use and implement these procedures? Are there any pitfalls they should be aware of?
Yeah, the main pitfalls here, as Anna was also describing, it's all about the data and the data availability and be able to prove everything. So we, for example, also have clients who are consolidating goods and then trying to re-import them, re-export them. So the audit trail of your data, the maintenance of that data, that is really important. A system like us could help with it, but there's also specialized companies who can help you out with making sure that you have all the data in your system and that you are ready for using these procedures. And I think Anna and her team are happily going to assist companies with a readiness check for stuff like this.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ludo. That's a very excellent, succinct kind of presentation there as well. So thank you, Ludo. Indeed, in the chat, we're going to be sharing some details about how you can get in touch with Ludo and the Customs for Trade team if you'd like further support with customs procedures like RGR and TA, including through automation solutions. And we'll also share this information in a follow-up email we'll be sending to all registrants from today's webinar later this week. We will come to some audience questions just in a second, but before I do, I just wanted to quickly let you know of our next webinar. There's a QR code on the slide on screen for this. It's going to be on sanctions and trade controls, an increasingly significant topic, as we all know, due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and rising geopolitical competition between the US and China. This one is taking place on the 25th of November at 3 p.m. and will feature one of our leading export controls experts, Andy Bridges, alongside partners from either side of the Atlantic at legal firm Womble Bond Dickinson. So do definitely sign up to that one if you're affected by export controls and sanctions. And again, a link will be posted shortly in the chat. Righto, let's start looking at some of your questions. Thank you to everyone who has written in questions so far, including those who sent questions in advance. A reminder, please do use the Q&A function if you can, or the chat room in the MS Teams window. Please do try to ensure your questions are relevant and not too specific, and make sure that they are of interest to the wider audience. So we've picked out a few which have come through. Let's start with one from Katia. So Katia says, if the original export was UK-Spain, can RGR apply if the re-import to the same UK entity is from France? For example, a different EORI number. I can never say that. Anna, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So it's EORI number. Well, that's usually how we say it, although many pronunciations out there. So the thing with RGR is about when you're using RGR in a UK context, so you're using it for re-importation of the product. So that's where you're looking at. You could be bringing the same product from somebody else, right? Imagine if you first sold that product has a journey, they may have gone somewhere else, you then need to come back in. So yes, there could be a situation in which you sent the product from the UK to Spain, that product that ended up going to France, and it's the French entity that is sending the goods back to you. That is absolutely fine, as long as the criteria are met. So goods must have been in free circulation, gone out in the previous 3 years, and you can evidence that more or less that this is the same product in an altered state with the same commodity code and classification. And we do actually see the use of RGR as a mechanism and just like Ludo just explained, to support international supply chains post-Brexit, because RGR is not new. Prior to Brexit, RGR was only available to UK and the EU for rest of the world trade. So you could do that returns from China, from US, from wherever. You couldn't do that on the trade between the UK and the EU. But now post-Brexit, you can be looking at this as a solution for your supply chain woes. In terms of getting your goods from mainland EU, for instance, into the UK, and then getting them out to Ireland, or getting them from Ireland into the UK, getting them out into mainland EU, or getting them from France to you and then back out into somewhere else. So absolutely, it does not need to be the same country or the same ER. It's all about who's claiming the relief rather than who's sending in the product itself.
And just on a similar theme, Ivona asks, can goods be returned under RGR to UK, be later exported to a different customer, so customer as opposed to country?
It can. The idea is that RGR is for the product to be returned, you then you claim the relief on that transaction, right? Once you've claimed the relief on that transaction, that is it. You can do with that product whatever you want. You can put it back into your stock, and then somebody else can buy it from you, and you can send it back out, especially if there is nothing wrong with that product. The only way where you wouldn't use RGR is if you send this to your customer says, my product is broken and I want to send it back to you. And you say, okay, you can send it back to me, and then I can repair it for you and send it back to you. That's not appropriate use of RGR. That's what you'll be looking to use for inward processing. But if you're not doing anything to that product, you can put it back into your stock and sell it to anybody else.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. I hope that was useful. Ivona, Tommy has asked a question. Can goods be imported into or exported out to a bonded warehouse with temporary admission? Ludo, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, indeed. Sorry, I was looking at the questions coming in, excuse me. Indeed, because for RGR, the goods have to be in free circulation to reclaim the duties. But if you're using temporary admission, we have a client of ours who are doing a lot of equipment for shows. And so what they do, goods are coming in, they store them under a bonded warehouse, send them out for temporary admission for a show, for example, in Dubai. Goods are coming back, so for that it is possible for RGR. The goods have to be free goods. Temporary admission is on the outbound side, so then they can just be temporary released, temporary imported. Yeah, indeed.
We'll rattle through a few of these because we're getting loads of great questions coming in. So Christina's asked a question: can I import from the EU in bulk, bottle, then export to another EU country, claiming the RGR? Bottling is a minimal process. I don't know, Ludo, do you want to start on that one? Or maybe Anna might want to come in.
Well, what I would do in this case, because you're adding value to the product, I would use outward processing for this, because it's not like in a bonded warehouse where you're doing usual forms of handling, putting a t-shirt and a shorts together. So in this case, in my opinion, it's outward processing that applies because you're adding value to the product. I don't know, Anna, if I understand, if you're thinking the same about this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's processing of a product. The product must come in unaltered. It can be used. And this is why RGR is good for returns of a product that has been sent out. It's being used by somebody, and for instance, it breaks. So using it's not a problem. Processing any type, it disqualifies the product from RGR.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, let's go do another one. We've had a question come in from Bradley. Bradley says, is there a benefit to exporting goods as 2300 and then re-importing as 6123 over exporting as 1040 and then re-importing as 6110? A nice techie question. Anna, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah. So how you choose your export CPC depends on what you know about the transaction at the time of export. So if you know you're sending the goods out temporarily, the best PC code to do that is 23, because you know that product is going to be coming back in. That then means you need to use 6123. If you don't know that the product is going to come back, then you're using CPC, sorry, it's no longer CPC, procedure code starting with 10, 10, 0, 0 in CDS. So it all depends on your scenario. One thing I would say is don't mix them up. If you export it under 23, don't use 6110 to bring it back. If you export it under 10, don't use 6123 to bring it back. So traceability of declarations.
Brilliant, thank you. There's a lot of numbers there, so
Yes,
well
yeah.
done
And I'm also seeing a lot of questions in the chat from clearly customs declarants, people that are doing declarations day in, day out. They're asking some really, really technical questions that are best answered by the CDS data completion instructions. These are not things that neither Ludo or I can kind of rattle off the top of our heads. Apologies.
Fortunately, I think we've got a question which may be a bit more general. So Emma's asked a question. For loaned equipment exporting from the UK, is it better to use RGR or temporary admission?
Oh, well, two different purposes, Emma. If you're exporting the equipment out and you want to bring it then back in, that is then staying in the UK, you could use RGR for that. So you would use procedure code 23 to go out, 6123 to come back in. If somebody, a client of yours or suppliers of yours, is sending you equipment on a temporary basis, they could use, or you could use temporary admission, but there's limitations in how temporary admission can be used because it's certain eligible goods for certain purposes. So it's understanding which flow you're trying to look at. RGR and temporary admission are not necessarily two solutions that could be used in the same kind of in the same scenario.
Okay, thank you. I hope as you saw, Emma. We'll do a couple of questions we got sent in advance. We had a question come in from Lysandra. Lysandra said, I'm interested in claiming return goods relief retrospectively. So once the import has already happened and we realise that the return goods relief should be applied, and she's particularly focusing on imports to Ireland from the UK. I don't know, Anna or Ludo, do you want to take that one?
You can use RGR retrospectively. It's an amendment to a procedure code. Again, you would need to evidence all of this. So you apply, and you can do that both in Ireland and in the UK. You can apply to the customs authority to amend the declaration. There's time limits for when declarations can be amended, and that way you can claim RGR retrospectively as long as all the conditions are met.
And maybe one way to add from our side, I'm more an example. I know in practice is a Dutch client who wanted to use this process, and he was able to prove the imports and was able to reclaim the duties, basically almost a duty drawback system like they use in the US. So you don't always have to alter your declarations. You can also just prove the evidence, talk to the customs office, make sure that you get to an agreement, and then do a duty reclaim. That's also a possibility instead of doing the whole amendment procedure if you have a lot of declarations.
Great, thank you. Thank you both. A question again from Ivana, which is an interesting one. Is return goods relief for possible for animal byproducts?
Yes, return goods relief, all it does is it looks at your duty liability and VAT liability. That is the only thing that it affects. Everything else still applies. So whatever you need to do to bring the product in terms of any certificates or anything like that, as long as you can comply with it, then RGR can help you relieve duty and VAT. That's the only thing that it affects. It doesn't affect any non-tariff measures.
Right, we are starting to run out of time. We're certainly not running out of questions. We've had loads of questions come through, so thank you everyone for sending them in. As noted, some of them are quite technical, but obviously Anna's given some advice about where you can get some information for that. And just a reminder that if you're not already a member of Chartered Institute, you can sign up to make use of our special interest groups or our lunchtime learning programs to get even more detailed information on these sorts of topics. But thank you everyone for your questions and for your poll responses as well. It's great having such an engaged audience. Before we go, just two things from me. Firstly, a huge thank you to our experts today, and Anna and Ludo. You've both given plenty of great insight and advice about how to make best use of these procedures, and I'm sure everyone is very grateful for that. Thank you as well to the whole team at Customs for Trade for your ongoing partnership with us, helping us put on webinars like this one. Secondly, just a reminder that in a couple of weeks' time, we will be convening business leaders, policymakers, and trade professionals for UK Trade's major annual conference, the Import-Export Show, near St Paul's in central London. Taking place on 19th November, this year's show is focusing on the theme of securing international trade with a carefully curated agenda bridging boardroom strategy with operational execution. There will be keynote speeches from John Drummond, Head of Trade Policy Division at the OECD, and Melinda Bohannon, Director General for Global Issues at the Foreign Office, as well as contributions from leading government and industry voices, including both Anna and Ludo, I believe, from today's webinar. So definitely sign up to this set piece event using the QR code on screen or the link in the chat. As we bring things to a close, please remember the recording of today's webinar is being uploaded to the Insights section of our website, export.org.uk, under the Resources tab, and we'll also share a link to it in an email which will be going out to you later this week. Please do get in touch if you do have any issues accessing this recording. Finally, as you leave, please do let us know what you thought of today's session and any suggestions for our future events by completing the feedback survey, which Camara is shortly sharing a link to in the chat. But for now, all that's left for me to say is thank you for joining us. It's been another great webinar, and we hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.